The draft is usually the answer for that stuff. And that's why, like, if and when they do trade Ullmark, if it's something like just a first round pick, I'm fine with that. Because A, you get the cap space, but B, you get a shot at a higher end player in the first round. And I think that's why I really hope, and I think they should, whatever package they get for Ullmark should include a first round pick. Now, up in Ottawa, they think it's going to be like 8 first round picks, 3 Connor McDavid.
Chychrun, the seventh overall pick, Boston's own pick, number 25.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get up to $100 matched on that first deposit. And guess what, Connor? With the NBA Finals coming up this week, Prize Picks, they got a good one going. If Jason Tatum scores 1 point, more than half a point, the square wins. It's a game 1 of the NBA Final, only square. Again, if Tatum scores 1 point, which seems pretty likely. It's pretty likely.
We'll see.
I would hope. Maybe he has a bad night.
For the Celtics' sake, I hope he scores at least a point.
That'd be nice. That would be nice. Gets to the free throw line at least once. Users must add it as part of their lineup before the timer ends. So again, use that promo code CLNS at Prize Picks. And you want to go to the game? You want to go to any of the games? Go to Game Time. Use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Connor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Trying to pass the time with getting to the off season. Now we know the Stanley Cup. Now we know the Cup final matchup. Edmonton and Florida, the furthest 2 teams in a North American sports championship. It's incredible. Man, imagine the travels.
I can already feel the media people tweeting and being angry at the airport. You love to see it when people whose job it is to travel and watch sports all day complain about their delays. You know what, Evan? Let me tell you. I had a few flights delayed when I was down in Florida that round. Was it inconvenient? I guess. I think if you've ever flown in the sky, you're aware that there's delays. But you know what? I try not to complain about it because you know why? I get to cover friggin' sports for a living. So maybe get some perspective, guys. You're not doing brain surgery. You're not laying off a whole wing of workers. Maybe just relax and watch the friggin' hockey game.
Yeah, as I look at these media tweets, if I was born yesterday, I would be inclined to believe that their jobs are tougher than being a coal miner or a mechanic or a plumber or an electrician or any physical kind of job. This sounds very difficult. This sports writing gig you're doing, where you're going to an airport, flying somewhere, and then watching a game and writing about it and talking to the players. That sounds pretty difficult. I gotta say, that job. I don't know, Connor. That job probably takes years off your life, right?
The calamity. What will I do? If only I have to spend another 2 hours at the Joe and the Juice at the airport. Calamity.
I don't know. Window washing a skyscraper. I think I'd rather do that than be stuck in the airport that long. Oh God, Absolutely. Those sports writers, those hockey writers might have a point. Oh man. Yes, I do get a kick out of the complaining about tweets. It's like, all right, like respectfully, shut up. Yes. Like, really, like just do your thing, do your travels. You're not paying for your travels. You shouldn't be. I would hope not. So, and if you are paying your own way, then, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to go in depth on this. This isn't like, I feel like we're speaking to a journalism class, just journalism students of like, oh, like, what about the traveling part of the job? And we're like, oh, well, here's the thing about travel,
Don't complain about it. Next lesson.
Don't complain about it. Let's go on we'll talk about sources next. But yeah, no, it should be an interesting one. I mean, again, like I was thinking about it last year for Bruins fans. The Cup final was obvious in who to root for. It was Vegas 100 times out of 100. You wanted Vegas to win. You wanted Bruce Cassidy to win. You wanted Riley Smith, Phil Kessel. I think Phil Kessel was on that team, right?
He was.
But mainly Bruce Cassidy wanted Butch to get one. He did. killed the Panthers. I mean, remember that game 5? It was like, what was it, like 8-1 or 2? I mean, it was just a thumping.
8-2, I think. Yeah.
Oh, it was a thumping. But this year the Panthers are back in it. Props to them. I mean, they're an annoying team to play against. They are easy to hate, but going there 2 straight years, I mean, you gotta hand it to them. Like, that's legitimate. I saw a tweet. It was like the Panthers had to face Vasilevsky in round 1, Swayman in round 2, Shesterkin, not Shesterkin. Yeah, Shesterkin
Yeah.
in round 3.
Too many Russian goalies in the
I was going to
tri-state
say,
area.
I get him and Sorokin mixed up consistently. And then you get Stuart Skinner in the Cup final, which maybe that's what beats them. An average goalie beats them. But I think it's an interesting thing, and we do this. We've been doing this every year for many years now. What can the Bruins learn from the teams in the Cup, in the Panthers and the Oilers? And to me, the biggest thing, and again, it's a hard one, and you'll know it, and it's obvious, number one center helps. Number one center does help from time to time. Barkov for Florida. Do you see the numbers for Barkov shutting down these opposing
Yeah,
guys?
he's been a monster this whole run. Unbelievable
And
player.
and then obviously Connor McDavid and future Bruin Leon Draisaitl on the other side.
Tell you what, if the Oilers win the Cup, I don't know how likely it is you have Draisaitl wanting to leave. So if you're a Bruins fan, I don't know if you're rooting for the Panthers, but even though I don't know, I mean, them getting this close means I feel like Leon Draisaitl is probably inclined of. I don't think he's looking to leave anywhere, at least for right now. But that's reading far too deep into things. But Stanley Cup win for him in Edmonton might be like, oh, maybe I will stay here.
Well, that's the thing. And I keep telling people, like, if they win, he's probably going to stay, I would think. And if they don't, he'd be closer to leaving. But it would be funny to see the Panthers become like the Buffalo Bills and just make it every year and not win. Like, that would be enjoyable. But I do think the trend of legitimate number one centers. I mean, Alexander Barkov can shut down anybody. He has been a beast. He's no longer this underrated gem in South Florida. He is a marquee star in the NHL. And then you obviously have Connor McDavid, who I believe, and I tweet. It takes a lot for me to tweet out like a hot take or an opinion.
Bold takes. Yeah.
Bold takes. I don't do that very much. Again, and I've been inundated with different athletes from every sport. I think McDavid is the most dominant athlete I've ever seen against his peers. Now, again, I didn't see Bobby Orr. I didn't watch Bobby Orr. And people are like commenting, like, are you 13? Like, yeah, basically, essentially, yes. Like, essentially, yes. But I just think he's so leaps and bounds better than anybody in the NHL. I mean, that first goal in game 6, just dangling Miro Heiskanen, who is one of the better defenders, if not one of, I mean, he's probably one of the 10 best defensemen in the NHL, just walked him. Like, again, and I just, like, but my point is, the McDavid, Barkov, Draisaitl, you do need one of those, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll separate the Oilers and Panthers in terms of like the different case studies, because I think the Oilers one's easy to sum up, right? Have a generational talent. I like, you look at the rest of that roster, and they've got guys who have obviously stepped up. You look at like Bouchard in his year, Zach Hyman, but like all of it centers back to you have a not even generational talent. Like you have a legit cheat code driving play.
Great.
Elevating everyone probably 2 or 3 tiers above what they are. Like even like Zach Hyman, who again is a very good player, has nothing to do with how much money his dad has or whatever. We're not getting to that discussion.
What? Yeah, it does.
Yes, we're not getting
parents' money. It's the parents' money.
Great player, nose for the net. Having Connor McDavid with him sure helps him get to 50 goals. Like I think you look at the way that roster is structured, and listen, hats off, guys have stood up. Like it all comes down to what you have with like 2 generational guys in McDavid and Draisaitl. So I don't know how many teams are going to be able to replicate that. Maybe you look at like the goaltending of like if Stuart Skinner wins this year and like Aiden Hill leads them last year, Vegas to a cup. Maybe it's like, all right, maybe just having a solid goalie and the talent in front of you is what you need. I disagree. I think you'd much rather have a franchise lockdown guy that I think at the very least serves as the higher floor for your cup hopes. You have an elite goaltender. You're going to be like the Dallas Stars or one of these teams where you're always going to be ideally in the second round, third round, hopefully get to the cup, right? So I'm not going to dive too much into the Oilers and how teams can copycat. Like, oh, just got to McDavid. and everything falls into place. And even
Right,
then, like it took,
just get a
yeah,
McDavid. I mean, come on.
and even then, like it took quite a few years for it all to kind of come together this year. But I look at Florida, and you look at what they have, especially just the way they're structured up front. Like I look at, even though Dallas came up short, you look at what Vegas did. You look at all these teams, Tampa Bay, that have had good runs. All of them have a lot of heft on the blue line, and I
Yep.
think what you saw from Florida, speed up front. And again, speed up front does not mean a bunch of, not to be disrespectful, but like a lot of Andre Kashets, guys that are like very,
Michael Grabner.
yeah, 0 to 60 can get in the play, but like, you need guys like Bennett, like obviously. And again, it's not like Sam Bennett's grow on trees in terms of how they kind of play, but I think having an aggressive forecheck, closing in on puck carriers, forcing turnovers, especially when the ice shrinks in the playoffs, like that's what you need to have up front. You need skill and you need speed up front, and guys that can win puck battles, put puck carriers under duress. And I think that's the biggest blueprint in terms of what other teams can follow. It's what Florida does well. And again, they have arguably one of the most suffocating forechecks we've seen in a long time. It gave the Rangers fits, has obviously given the Bruins fits. We've seen it time and time again. But I think if you're looking at other teams and how they want to base around what you're trying to do and how you're trying to build your roster, a lot of size on the blue line and a lot of speed and skill up front. I think it's what it's going to be. And again, speed and skill catered towards the playoffs and that physicality. Like you're kind of towing the line, I guess, right? But I think there is a sweet medium in the middle there of what you're trying to look for in terms of how you want to build your forward core.
And I think we said all this last year with Florida in the Cup final too. It was like, this is a big team, especially on the back end. We've said this for a while. And forecheck the hell out of teams. And you need team speed to be able to do that, because you need to get in on pucks quick and be physical. And again, I'll kind of reiterate what you said. It's hard to find fast guys who are physical. There aren't a lot of those guys. There aren't a ton. So you do have to get a little lucky at times. But it is nice to have those kind of players. You brought up an interesting thing with the goaltending, because this always gets brought up of like, oh, just get, like an Aiden Hill or a Stuart Skinner and they'll get hot.
A running back by committee, kind of like
Yes.
goaltender by committee,
Yes. The problem with that thinking and that logic is, for every one of those guys, there's 5 or 6 teams that have a similar situation that don't do anything, that don't go far that they're out in round 1, right? Like there are those kinds of teams. I mean, even look like and I know it's, they were the final seed, I think, in the whole tournament, but like Washington, Charlie Lindgren's a fine goalie, but is he going to backstop you to a cup? No, probably not. And there's a lot of those kinds of, teams with average goaltending. Look at Toronto all these years. Like, so I think
Colorado.
Colorado. Yeah.
Colorado won a cup with Darcy Kemper, kind of playing like ass, to be honest with you. But like their team was so dominant in front of them. But look at them now. They come up short the last couple of years, and what are they in desperate need of? Is a proven goalie. Like again, if you have a freakish team in front of you, you can maybe win a cup if all the stars align. Like let's same with like the Oilers. I think this year the Oilers win the cup. Are they like Stuart Skinner's our guy? Lock him in long term. I wouldn't. Like in terms of just having a consistent contention window, having a legit number 1 goal, I think is the biggest key to just always being in that mix of, again, second, third round. As long as you get to that final 8, final 4, you're putting yourself in a better spot, as opposed to having a insert goalie here and run the risk of them imploding in one of these rounds when you've had a really strong regular season.
I was going to say, because you have an elite goalie like a Shesterkin, or now like a Swayman or an Ottinger, you're pretty much guaranteed like a round win every year. You're at least guaranteed to be a contender. You should. Again, there obviously things happen. You
look
should
at Hellebuck.
Well, yeah, but like you're contending at least. You're in the mix, and that's when anything can happen. But just having, I know Vegas last year was different because they got a bunch of guys got hurt, and that was not. I don't think that was by design, obviously. But people being like, oh, just trade Swayman and trade, just go Ullmark and Bussy, or trade Ullmark and Swayman and just go with Bussy. Like, it doesn't work like that. Has anyone actually said that second part?
Give it time, Evan. We're still early into the off season.
I feel like I've definitely heard like a talk radio caller call in and be like, just trade Swayman and Ullmark and you'll be good. Sorry to the headphone listeners there. I might have just screwed you a little bit.
It was accurate.
It was. Those are the callers. I want to get into the center position though, because obviously McDavid's impossible to replicate. But the Draisaitl's, the Barkovs, or players with those effects, I want to get into that. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Prize
The
Picks.
finals are right around the corner, and it's time for you to get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your cash with Prize Picks, as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level with a title on the line. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. When the finals are over, hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is just getting started. With young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Brianna Stewart and Aja Wilson, you can win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and a huge selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And with basketball season still in full swing, there's plenty of opportunity to participate in Prize Picks. This week on Prize Picks, I'm selecting Jaylen Brown for more than 25 points and Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 3-pointers made. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Now, let's get back to the show.
So people have been replying to my tweet about McDavid with various athletes from all walks of life. But and I tweeted this. I think there is one who is above Connor McDavid, and that is the great Joey Chestnut. I do think Joey Chestnut is he might be a little bit greater in comparison to his sport than Connor McDavid. Just me. Or Baby Gronk. Baby Gronk's another one. I was so mad I didn't initially tweet Baby Gronk because I think that would have been a perfect, like, my age kind of tweet. So
you would have been right in your wheelhouse, right in your Q zone, Evan.
Right in my chronically online Q zone. But yeah, it's been fun to see all the different athletes. I'm not gonna get into like why it's McDavid, why it's not other guys or women. I leave the tweet as is. I stand by it. That's it.
The guy's a sicko. The guy's a psycho. Every single time he's on the ice,
he's an assassin too.
He's an automatic sicko mode. It's unbelievable. Like, yeah, there's no one like him in the entire league. It's straight up a cheat code. We mentioned Pasternak's a cheat code every time McDavid's on the ice. He's elevating. You know, it's even like, you know, LeBron James, who you put him on your team, you are an automatic bid to the Eastern Conference Finals every year. Like, still, I don't think it's the same overall, like, what McDavid has brought to this team. Maybe it is, right? Like, I mean, it's a close in terms of just one guy's impact elevating everyone else. But, like, if you're putting in those two guys in the conversation, you got a pretty damn good couple of players you're mentioning here.
Yeah, I mean, Brady, every year they were a lock for the conference championship. Like, it was automatic. It's interesting because, like, I know hockey better than I know basketball and football. So I can't, I don't know the ins and outs of LeBron James's game the way I can watch Connor McDavid and have a pretty good idea of how, what he's doing and all those things. Nobody can replicate it. Especially watch Connor McDavid. Impossible to replicate. I just think McDavid is so leaps and bounds better than everybody else. Like even Tom Brady, right? Like Tom Brady, I'm the biggest Pats fan. I love Tom Brady. He won on his intelligence, his grit, his determination, all that stuff. There were technically more talented quarterbacks there have been in history, right? Like just arms, all that stuff. I am not a quarterbacks guy. I can't get into that. McDavid is the most talented hockey player I have ever seen in every aspect, not just speed, but being able to do the moves he makes at the speed he's able to do it at with guys trying to kill him. Like I just, and again, I didn't see Gretzky in person. I didn't see Orr in person. I did see Kasper's Dogovins in person. So I think
of course,
that counts for something. But yeah, McDavid's been insane. I feel like if the Oilers win, he's a lock for Conn Smythe. Holy crap. Yeah. The center position, though, is interesting. And I mentioned this right before the break there. Obviously, you can't go out and get a McDavid. That would stink. That's, you got to suck horribly bad in the perfect year, which is not something you plan for.
Every
Um,
25 years. Yeah. Like
yeah, it would. Yeah,
it's not even like a Macklin
a Bedard.
Celebrini or Bedard or anything like that. And like, listen, people are hyping up Bedard and he's going to be a great player. McDavid's one where you're like, holy shit, when that guy's out there. And that doesn't happen very often.
Different breed. But the idea of getting a legitimate number one center who can shut down other lines, who can drive play, who can do the little things right, sounds a lot like Patrice Bergeron. What's it going to take for the Bruins to get that guy again? Is because I don't know if it's homegrown. Patra's still a ways away. Coyle and Zaka are not that. Are they getting that in free agency? Like, is an Elias Lindholm going to be able to go toe to toe with Barkov? Because the Panthers to get out of your division now, you have to beat the Panthers, I think.
Yeah.
Now, again, they have a lot of free agents coming up: Reinhart, Montour, Ekman Larson. Like, they have a lot of stuff they got to figure out. But I still think the core of that team is good. You're going to have to deal with them for a long time. At least you should. You've got to find someone who can match a Barkov or something, or get close to it at least. Like, do you think a guy like an Elias Lindholm could potentially be that?
I mean, I think it helps the case, right? Is it someone that can, straight up go completely match or negate someone like Barkov? No, probably not. But
No,
like
you're not going to find
a
that.
guy, yeah, yeah. But unless you reel off some incredible trade or something like that. But again, we can go down the rabbit hole of what assets you have. You can look at a guy like Leon Draisaitl when he's a free agent and throw the bag at him. Yeah, that'd be great. But you play a very, very dangerous game in this league when you're looking at a guy's pending free agent status and whether they even get to the finish line, whether they actually hit the market, right? So, like, yeah, if you got McDavid or not McDavid, you're not going to get Connor. If you get Leon Draisaitl and he's on the market, yeah, that's the most obvious fix there. If you get Draisaitl, you're a legit contender for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
If you don't win a cup in the next 5 year window without a guy like Draisaitl with who else you have on this team, something has gone horribly wrong, right? Like that is the biggest equalizer, the biggest key. But in the meantime, yeah, it has to be either through a guy like Lindholm, and I think it's all about just moving the needle, right? Like you look at this team, and yeah, there were some lopsided losses to the Panthers, but it's still like you beat them in game one. You had a couple of really competitive games. Who knows how that game four changes with the Bennett goal? Like you had a competitive series against the team that is the cream of the crop in the NHL. In the East and arguably the entire league, right? Like you say, Florida's probably the deeper, stronger team. When you look at this head-to-head matchup, but it's all about, I think, just finding what ways to push the needle further, right? If you get a guy like Lindholm, is he a bona fide franchise 1C? Probably not. Can he be a serviceable 1C and a elite 2C if you have more pieces in place down the road? Yeah. If you have Elias Lindholm and he's matching with Barkov and is doing what he can to slow them down, and again, what we keep on talking about with any of these free agent signings, you sign a center and it allows you to push Zaka to the wing or it allows you to push Coyle to 3C, that makes your team stronger as well. Like, look at that Florida series against Boston. What line killed you quite a bit, especially at 5-on-5 play? It was Anton Lundell, who was a great center, who was pushed down to the third line once Bennett came back, and him, Listerainen, and Rodriguez cooked you.
Oh yeah.
It's what we always see feels like every team that goes on a deep run has their third line clicking, and it becomes a lot more tenable if you're the Bruins to have a really effective third line. If next year you have guys in the top six, and all of a sudden if your third line next year is, Frederick Coyle Geeky, that's pretty good. That's
I'm
a
fine with
pretty
that.
damn good third line, right? So, are you going to get a Barkov or one of these generational franchise fixtures? Probably not. You'd have to have a whole lot go your way, and if it's through a trade, it's going to hurt quite a bit. You're going to have to be, again, you're a team that should be a sought after destination on the free agent market, which helps you. Just who actually gets to that free agent market. So if right now Elias Lindholm's your best bet, you throw the bag at him, you sign him, and all of a sudden, what do you know? Your team does get better, more pieces fall into place, and you move that needle further. Because again, like if you look at where the Bruins are, and people are disappointed they came up short. How far away are you? Is there a sizable gap? And I know Bruins fans, when they get bounced by some of these teams, view them as these Leviathan juggernauts. People were scared shitless of a not a Toronto Maple Leafs team. They're not scared shitless of them. They're scared.
That's the one team who ranks
They,
lower on the rung of scarcity.
they were scared shitless of this Lightning team, who like were the weakest they'd been in years, off of just what they were a few years ago. The Florida Panthers probably in that same regard. Like, but still, you had a pretty competitive series against Florida. If you add another piece or two, doesn't mean that all of a sudden it's a free for all. You're at that level. Further helps your chances at what is already a competitive series of maybe putting it more in your favor as well. So you do have to get a centerman this offseason. I think that's fairly obvious, but how realistic is it to get a 26-year-old 80-point guy? Doesn't seem likely, but you can still narrow that gap just by adding a guy like Lindholm for sure.
Yeah, there is one way, like one route the Bruins could have to potentially getting their next big franchise number one center. I want to get to that in a second, but first, a quick word from our friends over at Game
The
Time.
NBA Finals are right around the corner, and if you're a Celtics fan, odds are that TD Garden is going to be packed in June as the Celtics go for Banner 18. And if you want to cheer on the C's inside the Garden, you got to go with Game Time tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace that makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And the best part about Game Time tickets, you can browse through the Game Time app to find great seats at affordable prices for all sorts of in-demand games, concerts, and other events. Want to snag last-minute tickets to a concert? Game Time Tickets has you covered. Maybe a Sunday matinee game at Fenway Park, or one of those spur-of-the-moment Friday night games watching the Sox. And with the Patriots and Bruins season set to get started later on in the fall, you can't go wrong with going to the Game Time app to find tickets ahead of time. It's really that easy, the action. And with flash deals and zone deals available, you can make it to some of the most in-demand games at the last second. With these last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying seats for sporting events, concerts, comedy, theater shows, and a whole lot more. Some of my favorite features of the app include seat views, where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and the lowest price guarantee, or else Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So what are you waiting for? Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, let's get back to the show.
So there is a little bit of a roadmap for the Bruins to potentially get their next franchise number one center. This does not mean next season. I don't mean they're going to bring the guy in who's going to go toe-to-toe with Alexander Barkov next year. That would be Lindholm if they go and sign him. But there is a way. There is a way, and it involves a little bit of luck. But if they did trade Ullmark and they got a first in return, hope that first round pick becomes that guy. That's it. That's it. And that's the play. And, you know, it's similar to like, you know, David Pastrnak was the 24th overall pick and he fell to you. Doesn't happen all the time. Doesn't happen every year. It's kind of rare. But that's when you pick in the first round. If you get it right, you can really hit on it. Again, it's not a reliable thing. But I said this last year. I remember when we were talking about how are the Bruins going to get their next legit number one center. I would always say it's got to come through the draft because you don't have the pieces to go trade for a proven one. Free agency is unreliable with getting a franchise number one true and tried center. The draft is usually the answer for that stuff. And that's why, like, if and when they do trade Ullmark, if it's something like just a first round pick, I'm fine with that. Because A, you get the cap space, but B, you get a shot at a higher end player in the first round. And I think that's why I really hope, and I think they should, whatever package they get for Ullmark should include a first round pick. Now up in Ottawa, they think it's going to be like 8 first round picks, 3 Connor McDavid,
Chychrun, the 7th overall pick, Boston's own pick, number 25. Throw it.
Just everything. But I think that's the I think the most reliable method is the first round.
Yeah, it's probably the most reliable if you're trying to land that impact player. I mean, look at like what, you know, Wyatt Johnston is doing with Dallas now, who I believe is a natural centerman. Like, I think you look at just the way that team is built, he'll further fill out into that role. But he's already impacting a team right now with, what he did in the playoffs, 16 points in 19 games. That's one of those players that, like, can help your core immediately while also you have a piece for the future. Like, those are the guys you try to hit on. Now, again, you run the risk of, with that first round pick, wherever it is selecting the right guy. And, it's, as much as you want a guy like Wyatt Johnson, maybe the player you add doesn't fit with your current timeline. Like, if you land a first round pick and you get a centerman, like, you hope it's someone that can help out, not like that year, obviously, but 2-3 years down the road, and help when you still have guys like Pastrnak and McAvoy in their late 20s. Like, that's the ideal scenario. But you could also just pick someone who maybe has a longer development time. You pick someone who doesn't even make it to the NHL. Like, it all invites plenty of risk, right? But I agree.
100%.
If you're trying to land a legitimate, 80-point center, down the road, that's the easiest path, as opposed to one trying to trade for a guy that, maybe you're relinquishing a lot of critical assets, or waiting for that guy to hit in free agency. The guys like Lindholm hit free agency every once in a while, and it's great. And the Bruins, I think, if they're going after a free agent target, you like their chances if they have the cap space, because they're a team that a lot of people want to play for. The market's great, all that stuff. But it's just who actually hits that market. Because as much as you hope it's a guy that you can build your whole team around, rarely do they actually get to free agency. You hear it all the time, but then how often does it actually happen? Not that much.
Doesn't happen that often. But I agree. I mean, again, like, I want Elias Lindholm for the Bruins. I think that's a fit. I think he gives you what you need next year. Like, there's upside. I'm not poo-pooing that, but I'm just saying, like, a true, number one center for the foreseeable future and all that stuff. Like, the draft is the right place to do it. Speaking of the draft, your colleague Kevin Paul DuPont wrote an interesting story in the Sunday Notes about, would San Jose ever consider trading the number one pick, which is basically you're trading Macklin Celebrini, BU product, Hobie Baker winner, gonna mostly. No chance he doesn't go number one. So we're just gonna presume it's Macklin Celebrini, his number one pick. I think that's safe to say. And Kevin Paul DuPont was evaluating, what teams might be interested, and San Jose probably won't do it. I think they stand pat. There's no way Mike Greer makes that move at this point at being a GM. They need it. They need that pick. But if they want to get a little crazy, add a bunch of, higher end, younger talent, future draft picks, something to think about. Now, as I was reading, I was like, could the Bruins ever make a trade like this? The answer is no. The answer is no.
I mean, yeah.
They don't have the pieces. Like, KPD mentioned an interesting one up in Ottawa. Like, I think that's an interesting. Like, if we're gonna play this game, Ottawa has those kind of proven young players who have high ceilings, like your Jake Sandersons and those types of guys. Like, is Lowry, Patra, like, what's your first round pick gonna be? Like, is that Swayman would definitely be going in that deal? Like, I mean, just
and again, yeah,
like Fabian Lysel's not getting that done. Like, you need younger, proven, high ceiling NHL players. Patra, Lowry, and Swayman are your three. I can't think of anybody else that would be, centerpieces of a Celebrini trade. I honestly, I can't. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. Like, you wouldn't do Charlie McAvoy for Macklin Celebrini because it makes no sense for either team. Like,
yeah,
what is Charlie McAvoy going to do for that Sharks team? Like, that Sharks team is awful. They need pieces for the future. McAvoy's an awesome player now. They don't need a McAvoy right now. So again, it'd be those younger type players, and the Bruins don't really have any of those guys.
exactly. Yeah, it makes no sense for San Jose to do. When you look at, like, again, they've actually given them credit. Like, they've sucked the last couple of years, but all the guys they've landed that are in their pipeline are really good. Keep on building that. Like, you look at, like, what Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini can do together. Like, you've got a really good core already in place. Like, no need to accelerate it. Like, honestly, like, bring those guys in, still land a top 5 pick probably next year, and keep on rounding out that roster. Like, they're on the right path, the slow and steady path, and they're hitting on all the guys they have. Don't mess it up. They don't need 25-year-old Jeremy Swayman right now. Like,
No,
they don't try to, look at the rest of the Western Conference and think you can accelerate. That's when you get into trouble. Is teams that try to cut corners, try to like the Blue Jackets. We're rebuilding. We're getting some intriguing talent back, and then they get Gaudreau and try to push things forward. Stop it. Keep on building. Like if you're already on that path, don't try to hit fast forward or try to cut corners or get shortcuts to get yourself back into contention just to be a wild card team, right? Like
It's not worth it.
No sense for San Jose's from San Jose's perspective.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't make any sense. I mean, I think that's a market where you can do that. You can take the time to rebuild. That was the Sharks were a team that were good for a long time. I mean, that team from when they got Joe Thornton to like a couple years ago, we're in the playoffs every year. In 2019 they were in the Western Conference Final. It was gonna be the Jumbo Joe versus Boston reunion in the Cup Final. That would have been much nicer than what happened.
Yes.
That would have been much nicer. I think the Bruins would have come out a little bit differently in that series. But yeah, I agree with you. Stay the course. No reason to accelerate it when you don't have to. Something that everybody should go do: subscribe to the Boston Globe. What can people look forward to from you over at boston.com and the Globe?
Yeah, we have covered every step of the way this offseason, whether it's free agency outlook, trade rumors, columns, features, all that good stuff. You can find all over at boston.com and the Boston Globe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. We're presented by Prize Picks and Game Time. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.